Hyper Aware of a Spiritual Realm by E.N.E. Chapter 3. Chronically Ill. For most of my life, I've tended to get sick rather easily. Throughout childhood, I would spike fevers and hallucinate. I would develop heat exhaustion and not be able to enjoy the summer. I actually developed a deep fear of vomiting, which I learned later is called emetophobia, and I became terrified of germs when I was 11. I would hold my breath when walking into stores or waiting rooms out of fear of breathing in anything that could make me sick. I didn't realize until many years later that the reason I feared it so much was because I had gotten so sick once that I had begun to black out. I slowly started losing my vision, and it's probably the first time in my life I thought I would die. Of course I was scared. Throughout my teenage years, I struggled with various health issues. I began dealing with chronic depression between 14 and 15 years old. My hormonal cycle became extremely irregular. My periods eventually became very painful, but I was too embarrassed to talk about them. I ended up having yeast infections, which horrified me, and I remember telling my mom once, sobbing. I began feeling fatigued often, and my energy was very low. I ended up dealing with panic attacks and social anxiety. I also didn't realize yet, but I had terrible OCD, which had affected me since childhood. I was convinced I was a bad person, and I couldn't stop ruminating on things that distressed me. I would get intrusive thoughts all the time that were graphic and traumatizing. It's safe to say that my nervous system was in fight or flight most of the time, and I didn't realize this could make your body sicker and sicker. I ended up developing a condition called PMDD, which would cause extreme mental and physical distress every month. I became severely ill after catching an illness when I was 18. That was another instance in my life where I questioned if I might die. Thankfully, I recovered, but I was never the same. It was also a period of time where there was a lot of grief and loss, which made it harder to get better and find any sense of joy or meaning. I began to experience hair loss, severe fatigue that left me bedridden, and developing allergies to certain foods. I had just become a dancer at this point and was so tempted to quit right then and there. But my mom encouraged me to stay at least a little longer, which I'm thankful I did. It became one of the few things that brought me joy. This next part of the story I really hate, and it devastates me. But when I was 19, there was yet another assault on my body and mind. I had quite literally prayed the year before to have family close by again, only to have them cut my other family members and I out of their lives for years. I had never been so confused and disillusioned in my life. At this point, I had just started taking thyroid medication after attempting to work with a doctor again. After the event, I began to slowly lose my appetite, a new symptom for me. I also began to start feeling numb. The world around me didn't feel real, and I constantly felt like I was never fully awake. I learned later on that this is something called derealization. I believe at this point I began to truly feel that my family never truly loved me, and I had lived a lie. I know there were some people who did, but I didn't understand how so many adults in my life could be so hurtful. They were the ones I wanted love and approval from the most, and yet they didn't really respect me. I felt unsafe, I felt unloved, I felt unwanted. I would go on to struggle with false guilt. I would tell myself maybe things would have been different if I had not shut down and felt unable to leave my room, or maybe I should have said something. I began to revert to that old childhood struggle of feeling like everything was somehow my fault. If anyone relates to this topic, I am so sorry. Estrangement, being shunned, or even lied about is never okay. I long to have support and to be built up at this time of early adulthood. Instead, I was abandoned. I wasn't even allowed to be the family member I wanted to be anymore. I never got used to that. It wasn't okay. It was wrong. There were innocent children involved that should never have had to go through that event, but that's their story to tell. My life went on, but I felt a hollow feeling that always was there. I had my dancing, as well as medication, which kept me somewhat healthy. Truly the only things in my life giving me stability. I desperately tried to find my worth in anything I could. People didn't feel safe to me anymore. Maybe they never had. I became obsessed with the idea of becoming independent. Even though on the outside I would laugh, I would joke, I even published a novel that year, I was mentally falling apart. I also began to struggle with my memories feeling blurry. My sleep schedule became very unstable and weird. I would eat about 2 meals a day because I wasn't hungry. I was a broken, young girl trying to act confident and like maybe I could have it all together. The next year, there was another string of family crises and traumatic events. It seemed every year I grew more unstable. I was finally trying to find help and tools for my mental health, but I was definitely in the baby stages of my healing journey. I was also still so young and just trying to figure my life out. I was very passionate about dance and had just met a new friend of mine at the studio I was part of. I had read a book about artistry and healing that changed my life. I just longed for things to feel meaningful and good. This, of course, was the year we had a global pandemic, as well as a national mental health crisis. Dance was canceled for a long while. My derealization became worse. I genuinely questioned if God wanted me to stop dancing, as if this was a sign. I think something I've learned is that life can be very cruel. I also believe there's a spiritual warfare, and we have an enemy seeking to destroy us any chance he gets. The moment I thought things would get better, I was wrong again. But I have to say, this was a turning point in my story. I was asked to help teach at my dance studio, which was a literal dream of mine for ages. I felt like Cinderella for one evening, living my dream, seeing faces of friends, people I would grow to love. I left that night in the dark, soaking in the last bit of gratitude. It was like the calm before the storm. I experienced the onset of Lyme disease within the next week. I was hoping I'd recover, but I never did. It seemed the final assault on my body before I would slowly become disabled. I would end up experiencing the gaslighting of doctors who I asked desperately for help from. I experienced paranoia, nightmares, memory loss, depersonalization, night sweats, scary blood sugar episodes, the feeling of dying. It was terrifying. At the time, I remember saying to myself, if I survive this, I'll never be the same again. It felt like everything I had done to try and gain independence, find healing, and be successful was all in vain. I kept thinking something was wrong with me, somehow. I felt like I just wasn't trying hard enough still. I would constantly end up people-pleasing at my own detriment, even among friends, because I was so terrified of losing them. I was paralyzed with fear at the thought of disappointing anyone. I'm not sure I believe genuine love was unconditional. I felt the way I understood it was you do everything someone else wants, even if it's wrong or unfair. You try to make them happy even if you're losing your own health in the process. I met someone at this time in my life who began to speak up for me, even if it was in small ways. I wasn't able to see or feel the ways in which he was right. I was knowledgeable. I did deserve to get paid for the work I did. I did deserve to rest when I was unwell. My confidence was at an all-time low, as well as my mental and physical health. I wanted to believe the kind things he said, but it's like I couldn't take it in. I felt so broken. I don't remember anyone else asking me this, but he asked not just, "How are you?" but, "Are you okay?" I still feel bad about this to this day, but I lied to him and kept saying yes. I think he knew better, but I was not ready to face everything that was hurting me. I continued to push myself much too hard, and I still have my regrets to this day. The inevitable health crisis happened when I was 23. I still didn't have a doctor. I rushed to urgent care and was given an anti-anxiety medication to at least calm the panic attacks. I wasn't sleeping or eating. I unfortunately continued to experience more gaslighting from doctors, and it took a few months to find someone who was actually kind and wanted to help me, something I'd never really had. My mom had to beg for recommendations as my health kept deteriorating, and that's how we found the first doctor who ever helped me. At this point, I quit my dancing, one of the hardest things I'd ever have to do. It's like I lost the life I had. I genuinely had no idea if I even had a future. I was disabled at this point. I was constantly disappointing my friends, the very thing I feared, by canceling on them out of necessity. A lot of people were confused and didn't understand. Most people didn't know how sick I was, but there were some who did know, even when I tried to hide it. Those were the ones who truly saw me, not just what I did or how I tried to present myself. I think I learned who my real friends were through this experience. I have been through countless treatments at this point. I have found only a few doctors I feel like I trust. I still deal with anxiety and nausea when I have to sit in waiting rooms. I still dread appointments even though I need them. I have been diagnosed with multiple conditions and assaults on my body. I've almost ended up in the mental hospital for suicidal ideation. I won't sugarcoat it. This life in many ways is like an ongoing horror film. Chronic illness is not for the faint of heart. It's also interesting to me how so many people can so easily have an opinion on something they know nothing about. Sometimes I may come across a bit harsh with things I say or believe, but the truth is that pain changes you. I have had to somehow survive and cope with the fact I will never get back the years I lost to severe illness. I will never be the same. This is another reason I can't put my hope in things that are fleeting or unstable. God never changes, even though our lives constantly are. All of creation is groaning. The earth is decaying, but God, He doesn't change. He is the same. It is a very painful thing. I am so grateful for different tools and treatments that have brought relief. Some have helped and others not as much, but I'm thankful for what I've been able to access. I'm grateful for therapy and learning how to embrace hope again after years of not only illness, but various traumas, mental anguish, and grief. I have learned a lot about complex PTSD, and I'm so grateful for having knowledge and tools now I couldn't have when I was younger. Yes, there are ways I have been failed, as I think many people have, but I am not defined by what other people have done to me. Even if I never heal from my chronic conditions, I've learned the most important healing is for the ways hidden wounds from trauma in our lives affect us. I'm doing it for the girl who needed to be seen and held in the moments she wasn't, but needed it most. I'm worth it. God believes I am, so why shouldn't I? A quote by John Bellion. Your whole life's in the hand of God. Nothing has changed. He is the same. He is still good.